Good afternoon, everybody. Dave here with Dave Ray Coaching and Consulting. We have a very special guest today, Steve Wedeking of Wedeking Law. We're going to be talking about estate planning for business owners, something that a lot of people don't really think about too much. You always think about estate planning for your personal needs, but as business owners, there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes that really needs to be protected and taken into account in case you are put out of commission, maybe in the hospital for an extended period of time, or God forbid, pass away. So good afternoon, Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Dave. It's good talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that as I've gotten to know you through the chamber, come to find out all kinds of interesting stuff about business law and business estate planning. So I think we got some great stuff we're going to talk about today. Very important stuff people are going to want to listen to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So the first thing, many business people, as you were mentioning earlier today, have quite a lot of their own personal wealth invested into their business. And not only their financial wealth, but also their time and emotional energy. So what's important for business owners to know about estate planning from the business side of their life?
Sure. So there a couple things, and I would say for one, they somewhat intertwine, right? The idea here is that business owners end up devoting their life to their business, right? They're a little different than the most 9-to-5ers who go. They might have a retirement plan, so their family's kind of set up otherwise. When your wealth is largely in your business, that means you're really dependent upon that. And if you were to pass away, getting that wealth from your business to your family is important, and not necessarily something people think all the way through. Like I deal with a lot of business owners, and like one thing I sort of mentioned a second ago is, somebody that has the 9-to-5 job or the regular corporate job, they have the 401k or the IRA. A lot of business owners don't. So there's not that fund already sitting there. I find a lot of business owners also are lax on having insurance to take care of their family, right? They got a business that makes money, they do great. So one of the things they have to think about is, again, how to get that business wealth to their family if they pass away. And another thing they have to think about is, as you mentioned, if they're out of commission, what happens to their business in the meantime, especially if their family is counting on what comes from that business. And for me, estate planning is really both about what happens when you die and if you're incapacitated. And there's different things that come up for a sole proprietor versus somebody that, say, has a partnership might keep going if you're incapacitated, but then if you were to die, then does your spouse become partners with the owner? Like, how does that work? So that's an important thing to think about when you're estate planning. And for the sole proprietor, like, who is going to get the work done if you're out of commission? And does the business just go out of business if you die, or is there somebody in line to take it over? So there's all kinds of things that a business owner has to think about. And when they do estate planning for their family, to me it's intertwined with looking at what happens with their business.
Exactly. Yeah, and so that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They have their family and personal life completely separate from their business, and they never really think of planning for exigencies on the business side of things.
Right.
You talked earlier today about a buy-sell agreement, and maybe you could talk about that for a minute, why it's important, and especially in regards to their estate planning.
Sure. So a buy-sell agreement is really important in your estate planning in two ways. Well, more than two ways, but two ways I want to talk about. One, let's say you're an owner of a corporation with 3 other people, and you pass away. If it's a corporation, that means there's stock. But if it's a private, smaller corporation, what is that stock really worth, right? What are you leaving behind to your family? And that's a really hard thing to quantify. And also, if your spouse were to want to liquidate that stock because they don't know anything about running the business and the other shareholders aren't really interested in your spouse running the business, like, how do we transfer that interest in the business to something your family can use when you're gone? And one of the things we use for that is a buy-sell agreement. And basically, there's two typical types of buy-sell agreements. One would be where the corporation buys your shares, that is, would give your surviving spouse money in exchange for the shares that are yours. In fact, it typically is going to restrict your spouse from selling the shares to anyone else. The other type is the other shareholders get to buy the stock. A couple interesting things that come up with this, though, like that's not enough just to think about that. One, how are you going to fund this, right? So when you're doing your estate planning and you're part of, let's say it's a 4-person corporation, you got to talk to the other shareholders and you guys got to come up with an agreement. One, on how are you going to value the company at the death of the one of you, or if one of you wants to leave. And two, how are you going to pay for those shares, either the company or other shareholders? And often that's done through an insurance policy, right? Insurance policy that funds a buy-sell agreement. And so, when you're looking at how do I take care of my family when I die, and my primary asset and where I generate money is over in this corporation, it's imperative that you have a buy-sell agreement so that your family gets the benefit of what you built without having to learn how to run the business or having conflict with the other shareholders. By the way, this is also important to avoid litigation for your surviving spouse or your surviving kids, whoever it is, right? If you don't have an agreement in place on how to value your interest and how to buy you out of your interest, then your family, what are they supposed to do? It leads to litigation, right? They try to sell their stock somewhere else. Shareholders say, no, don't do that. We want it. So you're really trying to keep, by the way, the goal of all estate planning, in my opinion, keep your family out of court and conflict. And
Absolutely.
This is the
Absolutely.
right? Yeah. So this type of business situation that you can do that as part of your estate plan, you look at buy-sell agreements. The flip side to that, I'll just touch on real quick, like if you're in a business and one of the other shareholders dies, right, you want to be positioned to where somebody that doesn't know about the company doesn't come in and try to change things, right? You want to be able to be positioned to where you keep the business going, and a buy-sell agreement helps you on that side as well.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's very important to be thinking about. That's something that I hadn't even thought about myself, in fact. Well, good. One last thing we can talk about here. We talked about this powers of attorney and how they're only really good as long as you're alive. Are there specific business situations that could be helped out with by having a power of attorney? And what do people need to think about in the event that they do pass away, where a power of attorney becomes no longer valid?
Sure. Okay, that's a great question. So let's just start with where a power of attorney is helpful or makes sense. Let's say you're a sole proprietor and you have 2 employees. Okay, you have 2 employees, and you get in a motorcycle accident, and you're going to be laid up for 6 months. So typically, when you're doing your personal estate planning, you're going to set up a power of attorney and maybe a trust, but power of attorney that on your personal side be able to handle your personal accounts, pay your personal bills. This may be your spouse. It may not be your spouse if you don't have a spouse. Anyway, to handle the personal side. There's a good chance that you would want somebody different to handle the business side, right? So let's use the example where it is your spouse, right? Maybe your spouse doesn't know anything about how your business runs, right?
Sure.
They run the home, they have their own job, right? And so you may want someone that's in a similar business to you that you trust, have power of attorney to help keep it going. It may be a key employee that you have that you want to give power of attorney to kind of keep business going. Again, this is assuming, right, that you're going to be coming back. Sure. And then you asked about at death as well. So power of attorneys are only good for while you're alive. Once you're dead, you have to have some other planning mechanism in place. And again, just kind of looking at the sole proprietor model, maybe an LLC, maybe an S Corp, something like that. If you don't have something in place when you pass away, those assets sort of are going to get frozen. There's a good chance. So that's where, again, your business and your personal planning come into play. Let's say you have a living trust for your personal planning. You may have that trust own your interest in your business. So that way, when you pass away, there is no need for that business interest to go through probate. It's just owned by your trust. Living in trust allow you to avoid probate. You have something set up in your personal planning to control winding down the company. And let's say you're a company that's just the best example of this is, let's say you're a realtor, right? They typically have a business entity they form to run their commissions through. And
Sure.
there may be money in those accounts when they pass away.
Yep.
And
Definitely.
if they don't have another signer on that account as sole proprietor or even S corp, like how are we getting access to that money? Well, if you have it owned, the interest owned by the trust, the successor trustee is able to access that money, take the money out, provide it to your family. So it's really powers of attorney are really about access to things and the ability to make decisions. Since they don't survive your death, then you need to have something else in place. And a trust may be that.
Oh, good. Well, that's important. And I know that I dealt with some trust issues with my grandmother when she passed away and my mother when she passed away. And I learned that there are a lot of issues that come up that you can't predict and you can't plan for. And you have to really know, that you're talking to someone like a lawyer like yourself that has seen a lot of these different types of situations and can know a lot of things to look out for, a lot of gotchas that'll be in the play there when the person does actually pass away. So I know that people like to procrastinate. I even did a weekly seminar on procrastinations last summer. So what can you tell us about procrastination and estate planning for business owners?
Sure. So so people procrastinate generally in estate planning, whether they're business owners or not. But I think business owners are even worse. By the way, no offense, business owners, I'm one. We're so tied up in splitting time between making our business work and spending time with family if we have it. If we don't have family, then we spend all of our time making our business work.
Oh, right? Yeah.
That we don't spend the time to go take care of these things because there's always something else to be done in the business. But like all planning, here's the deal. Estate planning, and people realize it's important. Like I talk to people, no one says, oh, that's not important. Everyone realizes it's important, but they don't consider it urgent, right? The next task at the business to get it to the next level or to make payroll or whatever is what's important now and urgent now. And so what I say is planning, people always know planning is important, but they don't consider it urgent. But once it's urgent, it's too late to make these decisions because you have to make these decisions before it's urgent.
Sure, exactly. Once the person's dead or the business owner or the spouse or the partner, it really is too late to go back and set up things that you needed to set up.
That's right.
So if we have people that are out there listening and they would like to get some information about some estate planning for their business, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. Steve Wedeking is the name. Steve at Wedeking Law is WedekingLaw.com is my email. Okay, WedekingLaw.com is the website. And the number is 619-663-8428. I do encourage people to call. You and I, like this much of the iceberg of, the relevant information about estate planning for business owners in this type of forum. Like you get to touch on some important stuff, but it really requires an in-depth look at an individual's personal situation to really understand what they need.
Absolutely. It sure does. All right. Well, good. And we'll make sure we put all that information down below the video too on the website. So thanks again for being with us today, Steve Wedeking from Wedeking Law. And we're in the throes of Thanksgiving. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. So for people that are out there, hope you're having a great Thanksgiving week. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, Steve. Good talking to you today.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, bye, everybody.